Thank you so much. It's a real honor to be here, Anil. Thank you for giving us this opportunity, and Sanjay also for organizing and arranging. What you saw here is a video, actually, was, as you can see, designed for the youth. I'm constantly sort of barraged by young people. A lot of the young people you see, I knew them before they even came into this world, and then after, as they grew up. And this whole idea of how to actually live and plan in this world. Please have a seat. We've got lots of room. And here's one of the young people who is also, I knew since he was a little boy.
He has not grown from there.
Spiritually, not physically, we're also growing. And for them, a vision of where we're going, how we're going to get there, and at the same time, in the world that we live in, people are becoming more and more attuned to values, environment, human rights, animal rights, balance in life, and the youth are really looking for a certain type of balance. And part of that balance is dependent on achieving that balance between now I'm going out into the professional world and how am I going to actually function in that world? And at the same time, what about me? What about me as a person? So is business life, is my profession a instrument? Is something to facilitate life? Or does my business become life and life itself is just an appendage? The family, the home, and everything else. So I usually try to do what I've been trying to do for the last 50 years, which is finding balance. Earlier we were talking about balance with one of our illustrious guests. And balance, in my experience, is not this. Just like you see, the figure of justice, and she's holding it, and she's got the balance like this. But my experience is balance, unfortunately, is very often like this. Sometimes you go to this side, and sometimes you go to that side, but you're always trying to find the median, because the world that we live in is a really well-troubled world on one side, but it's really speeding forward. And in order to keep balance, you've got to be alert, and it's a day-to-day job. Youth are looking for what type of profession I'm going to have, and how am I going to live my life? I've got all of these other aspects, the family. Here we've got a sports ball. Yes, people want to be very active. They're going for walks. Today I was in Regent's Park. I was amazed at how many people are out there jogging in short pants and t-shirts. And I was bundled up in 2 sweaters, and I borrowed Anil's coat, and I was only walking. And I didn't have shorts on either, but I did have a dhoti. And to please my mother, I had long underwear as well. So we need to be, we need to have all of these things that become part and parcel of life. People want to spend some time, they want to meditate, they want to go within. What about seeing the rest of the world? And of course, how much do I need for all of this? This is not really just an issue which is for the youth, but it's an issue for others. Because in my counseling, I do come across other more senior citizens, and I don't mean senior citizens, but those who are already situated, who already have commitments, who already have mortgages, who already have businesses, who are already doing very well in the world, and they're faced with a more progressive version of what the youth are. The youth have the opportunity to plan from point zero. which is a really good place to plan, because if you're going to plan where you're going to go, it's good to plan when you're right from the beginning. Once you're already on a certain journey and all of a sudden you realize, wow, now how I'm going to plan, then it's a little more difficult to change the ship, especially when the ship has a lot of things going on with it. So all of us are in this situation, and when I say us, I'm no exception. I'm not just a Swami who chants and does spiritual life. I've got spiritual organization, and believe me, spiritual management is more difficult than the management that you're doing. You don't like an employee, you can fire him and hire someone who's better. I can't do that. I'm working with volunteers, and you can't get rid of a volunteer. And many volunteers come, right, and ill, because they're not necessarily the most professional people in the world. So using them and engaging them is also a real challenge, but at the same time, I'm supposed to be, and I am, a Swami. I need to be. I'm writing books. I do my own personal meditation. 2 weeks from now, I'm headed off to India, hopefully to be able to get away from it all and just remember about what the balance is all about. So we're all doing it to one extent or another. And like for those who've got businesses, who are employed, who are very active in the world outside, I'm also very active, and sometimes I ask, well, did I join a religious institution to become part of a religious institution, or did I join it here to actually become a self-realized soul? And it's a challenge. So that business needs to be actually just an instrument of life. It's meant to help us achieve some of these things. Family. And unfortunately, part of my counseling is to those people whose family is falling apart. I have a big house, I have multiple cars in the garage, I have a beautiful wife or a handsome husband, but I never had time for them. I worked so hard for all of these things, but I'm never there. And ultimately these things then start to suffer. And you got infidelity problems, and you've got problems with the children. The children we brought into this world in order to actually be parents. But sometimes we're just so busy that we don't have time for all of those things that we're working for. Now that's a real catch-22 situation. And of course, we've got all of these other possessions, and getting things is relatively easy. Maintaining them is very, very difficult. You know, in our Hindu faith, and similarly in our Vaishnava faith, Brahma is considered to be the creator. As you know, Shiva is the one who ultimately winds everything up, and Anaya is the destroyer. But it takes Vishnu to maintain, because maintenance is the most important thing. So we get many things, and then to maintain these things according to standard, it takes time, it takes energy, and of course, all work and no play makes Sanjay a bad boy, worn out. So we need to disconnect. We need to get out of that situation, and we need to do it regularly. I have a cousin who's a movie producer. He's much better at this than I am. 4 times a year he takes out 2 weeks, and he's been trying to get me to do the same thing for the last 30 years, and I try to explain to him, my organization will not facilitate this. He manages himself. I also have to manage myself, but I'm integrated into a very demanding, spiritual, wonderful spiritual organization. And then spirituality. Because because we're here. You're all sitting here. You all look differently, but in essence, we're all actually not these physical bodies, but we're spiritual entities. And unfortunately, this is one aspect of education that has really sort of slipped through the process and has never really been integrated into our educational system, is to teach our children, to teach our adults, to teach our university students who are we. Which is quite an important thing, because everything that we do is based around us. And yet at the same time, we're not necessarily clear about this very basic, fundamental criterion of knowing who we are. And Bhagavad Gita, which is the major and most authentic text on yoga, it is the basis of all yoga philosophy, starts off with this basic teaching: to distinguish the self from the body, and to understand that the self is the soul within. And the soul needs to be fed. And unless it is, regardless of all of these things, internally, we're not really satisfied with ourselves. Very often we lose direction. Where am I going? What's it all about? And we may know that when we're sleeping at night. So what is the real priority of all of these things? Everything has a priority. You prioritize your work and different aspects of your work. And of all of these things, what is actually the priority? And well, what would you expect from Sivarama Swami? What am I going to say? Well, obviously, this is what I'm going to say, that it is the spirituality, but not because I'm Sivarama Swami, and not because I'm a Hare Krishna Swami or a monk, but because that's what we are. We're spirit. So the first thing we need to do is nurture our spiritual identities. An example that's found, for instance, in the Upanishads is that of a tree. A tree has roots, a tree has a trunk, a tree has many branches, it has leaves, flowers, fruits. Where do you water it? You water the leaves, you water the flowers, and everyone knows, you water the root. The soul is the root of our identity. When you water the soul, then not only you become spiritually successful, but all the material things also fall in place. And there's a certain kind of magic to that. And why is this the priority? Because this is who we are, and because all these other things, they pass away. Now, you're all here, one way or another. I'm going to say you're in the business world. I'm in another type of business organization. But let me give you a business example. We all know that whatever we achieve in this world, it may stay behind, but we're leaving. At a certain point, each and every one of us, 100% we're leaving. It means that in one sense, all of our investment is lost, or at least it comes out of our possession. So who would invest in a type of business where you know that at a certain point your business is going to go bankrupt? Well, you're going to lose everything. And you're going to lose everything. So because we're going to lose everything, we have to realize that this is simply a facility. All of our things that we're doing is an instrument for a greater cause, because like it or not, it's all going to be taken away from us. We come with nothing, and we leave with absolutely nothing. So good business acumen means, all right, that there is this spiritual priority, and when that spiritual priority is in a healthy situation, when I actually give this time Things really work. Here is this man. Every day at 6:30 in the morning, he walks over to the Hare Krishna temple. He takes out the kartals, he chants Hare Krishna in front of the deities, he bows down before the deities. It's a activity that he performs on a daily basis. He makes time. He hasn't lost as a result of that, but rather he gained. When he first came over there, he had 100 pounds, and he gave his only 100 pounds to me. Of course, I didn't take it. I told him to put it in the donation box. And here we are, in Mayfair. He's no loser. Last night, I spent an hour with Srichand Hinduja. They're friends who I've known for the last 40 years. They're also there every morning.
Yes.
And when, Gopichand I spent with. And when Srichand was in better health, he was always there. They were both there. So these are two examples. And there are many other examples. Historically, for those of you who are from an Indian background, you know. Was Arjuna and Yudhishthira Maharaj, were they poor people? They were managing this whole world. Well, we're talking about Anil Agrawal, but compared to them, they lived in palaces. They had palaces everywhere. They had unlimited wealth, but they were also dedicated to spiritual practice. So it is a good investment. But from the practical point of view, when we're talking about, all right, if we've already started our path and we've already got so many commitments, and everyone is OD'd, there's no question about that. I'm OD'd, he's OD'd, you all have more things to do than you have time. But still, spiritual life also requires time. If you want a job, you got to make time. If you want to do some other exercises, you want to practice yoga, you want to make time. Whatever we want to do, if we want to give that time to our children that we're not doing, we have to make time. But I'm now talking about spiritual practices. Start with 10 minutes a day. I gave Anil as an example. As you can see, he's not a loser, and he's giving more than 10 minutes a day. When he's walking over there, he's got his hands in his bead bag, and he's chanting his mantra. So if you just try to dedicate 10 minutes and do that on a regulated basis. The best time is early in the morning. And that 10 minutes has a potency. All I can say is it has a certain type of magic. And the magic is in itself, whatever spiritual discipline that you take, and no doubt I'm going to give some recommendation as to what that's going to be. But whatever discipline that you do, and you do it regularly, it will empower you. You will feel empowered. You will feel empowered spiritually. You will feel empowered emotionally. It will bond the family, and also it will give direction to life. But another part of this magic is that it will, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, time I am. If he wants to make you much more efficient than you are, you can be much more efficient than you are. What you think is 24 hours can appear to be, you can do the work of 48 hours. If you get connected to this magic, the magic that comes from giving that 10 minutes, you appear as if you're getting more hours added on to your life. Does it work something like that, Daniel? Okay, he's saying yes. He doesn't have any choice. You have to say what I'm saying. And it does. That magic is there, is that time becomes more flexible. It becomes your servant. It becomes your assistant, rather than actually becoming an obstacle to overcome, a problem to manage. So what to do in that 10 minutes a day? Here are two things that I recommend. Bhagavad Gita, which I had introduced earlier on, is the premier authority on yoga, self-realization, and understanding the world in a spiritual, transcendental light. Read it 5 minutes. It's not a lot. And mantra meditation. I don't know if we have time, or MC may introduce us to that mantra meditation, and do that for 5 minutes. We have the Maha Mantra. Other people chant Om. Some people chant Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Whatever authorized mantra, it will actually empower you for the day. And of course, as we do, associate regularly with saints, with those who are really dedicated and who can actually teach how to both understand this and other such texts, and how to go deeply into this type of meditation. And of course, you know, meditation is becoming very popular nowadays. So I try to wed this sort of spiritual time management to this, because I know that when I sit down and talk to someone, it's like, can you read about? I'm sorry, I don't have time. That's the first obstacle I always come across. But if we make time, and if we give it an experiment, you'll see that it actually works. And I gave 2 examples, and there are many other examples, some also who are still sitting here, Prashun and others, who show that yes, it actually does work. Spiritual success means material success. It's not an either and or, and the 2 of them actually make life a success. At least as successful as we can be in this world. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but as good as you can get it. Thank you very much.